Okay, perfect. Again, this is that new system I'm still working with over in the bedroom here, and I think I've got it this time, but we shall see. And it's hard because I'm working on a really small screen because it's on my makeup stand. But I've got a few clips for you guys today that we didn't get to do last time. And I'm just going to stick my hair up because I'm getting ready also for an interview. So that's why I'm doing a Get Ready With Me. I'm on Fight for Liberty in under an hour. So whatever I can get done, I can get done. I'm glad I finally got this system set up. So let's get right into it. I probably shouldn't take my glasses off yet. That is a bit too optimistic probably because I need to make sure I have everything set up. So let's see. I've got a bunch of Ben Shapiro clips, a little bit of Dave Smith, some Jimmy Snow. So I'm looking at my screen here and it looks like we might not, the next scene might not be correct, but let's see, okay? Now let's try.
Murray had until recently been hopeful that the discovery of several effective vaccines could help countries achieve herd immunity or nearly eliminate transmission through a combination of inoculation and previous infection. But in the last month, data from a vaccine trial in South Africa showed not only that a rapidly spreading COVID variant could dampen the effect of the vaccine, it could also evade natural immunity in people who had previously been infected. Well, if that is the case, then you literally can't do anything. You've now talked about a disease that you cannot create immunity to, right? It just comes back around. It's like a common cold. It just comes back around. And the vaccine ain't going to work on it. So what exactly are you supposed to do? Lock yourself in your house for the rest of time?
Alrighty, and I don't know why during the sound clips my mic is not being muted. So the clips we have from Ben are on some various topics, but it's true. On this whole thing that's going on, putting on my primer, with the vaccine, there's this ever-shifting goalposts. And I don't know what they think they're trying to accomplish. Well, maybe it's me who's just being... Have I not learned? I guess that's what I have to say. I keep thinking at some point people are going to get tired of this. You know, for so long we heard you got to get the vaccine. And then there's the vaccine. And now, well, it doesn't matter. You can still get it anyway. And you can still pass it on. So you still got to social distance and wear a mask. Then what's the frickin' point? What is the point whatsoever? Now they're trying to scare with variants. Here's the thing. If this is just a new fact of life, it's a new fact of life. The key word here is life. What we did last year is not life. So things are going to get back to something. And I can tell you, I, for one, am not living how I did last year. That's not living. That's not freedom. So, yeah, I don't know how long people will actually tolerate this or how long the government thinks they might tolerate it. But I can tell you, at least in the circles around here, not even libertarian circles, people are getting sick and tired of it. And I'm going to say what I said from the beginning because it's funny, because more and more follow the science people are now starting to agree with me. And I wish I took names at the beginning of this with the people who were treating me like shit and mocking me for what I said. Viruses, things like that are just part of nature and reality. And you have to deal with Mother Nature on her own terms. And the fact is, you can't keep everyone from getting it. And in every organisms, because that's really all we are, time on Earth or time in the universe, you either overcome the pathogens or the pathogens overcome you. We cannot live in a bubble forever. That is not life, and that's not going to work. In fact, what's going to happen, I think that we're going to see, is this living in a bubble is going to make if it's done for long enough people start to lose resistance to other things. You see, I'm going to give you an example from The Tudors, of all things, from that television show, The Tudors. Now, I know that's fantasy, right? But he had the son, King Henry had the son he longed for so long. So what did he do? He wrapped this kid in a virtual bubble. Like everyone in the nursery was required to scrub down the walls with disinfecting every day. And that ended up, the kid died young. And the theory is because he didn't build up any natural immunity to anything. He was overprotected. So if it just is the fact that this thing's going to keep mutating and it's, it's just going to keep going around, well, then that's just a fact of life. And it's what we're going to have to deal with. You can either be completely safe or you can be completely free. And each bit of freedom you give up, you might not even get a bit of safety. But you might. But it's never worth it to give up freedom for safety. And I'm going to use an example that some people might find inflammatory. But you want to know what? For a while there, I think I was getting bit a little bit with the SJW bug. Not really, but kind of. I found that I was really self-censoring and not using the examples I'd like to give because you don't want to offend people. You don't want the wokesters coming after you. With how far they've gone, I'm done. I do not give a shit. If you are offended by my analogies, your browser button is really easy to find, to hit, to go away. So here's the analogy. There's people who still make this argument today, legitimately make this argument today. Sadly, some of them are Christians. There'll be people who will argue that American slavery was just not that bad. In fact, those slaves had it pretty good off. Some of them, if you had a good master. Now, of course, there were some shitty masters, but if you had a good master, these people would argue, and I keep saying these people because this isn't an argument I'd make, that they had it well off. They had guaranteed food, they had guaranteed housing, they had guaranteed clothing, which was much better than poor white people who starved to death and, died from exposure to the elements. But that isn't living. Okay, so you're kept like a prize horse, and you're fed well, and you're clothed well, and you got a nice stall. But is that living when you're a slave? No, it's not. And if this contagion is just a new fact of reality, it's a new fact of reality. I'm not becoming a slave. Live dangerously, then safely on my fucking knees. All right, let's see some of the comments here. And where'd my cursor go? Here we go. And I did want to give a couple other comments here because I've had some people reeing over the fact that I play quite a few Ben Shapiro clips and agree with him. Because it turns out that libertarian dogma today is that you have to hate Ben Shapiro. You have to hate Jordan Peterson. I'm sure I can name some others. But I'm not going to hate those men because half of the time they're right. And I do my fair share of criticizing Ben Shapiro. You don't believe me? I just did a video critiquing Ben Shapiro's take on George Floyd. It's called Don't Cry for Me, Ben Shapiro. Go check it out. Some Ben Shapiro fanboys got really upset with me, just like when I did the critique of Tucker Carlson, where all the Tucker's boyfriends came at me. But anyway, half of the time, Ben Shapiro has a lot of really good points, just like there are some progressives that I agree with. So, yeah, I don't listen to many libertarians. Dave Smith and now Tom Woods. I go on. I go on and off. I get tired sometimes, and I stop. I start listening to audiobooks and not shows. But those are the only two libertarian shows I watch regularly. Everything else is either progressives or right. So let's go on to the next Shapiro clip.
Undergirding all of this is a twofold proposition. Proposition number one is that it is very good for centralized governments to have enormous power over your life because they know better than you. And that is the second proposition. You don't know how to handle your own life on nearly any metric. You don't know how to handle your own personal economics. That is why we need to remove money from you and then supposedly give it back to you later, even though we won't, with Social Security. It's why we need to make sure that you're not going to take care of your own health care. We need to provide health care for you, we the centralized government. You don't know how to educate your child. We're going to tell you how to educate your child. And you don't know how to avoid death. So we are going to force you to wear a mask. Right? That is the centralizing government rationale behind so much of the debate that is happening right now.
Exactly. You know, it's like whatever thing, and he's going to say this, I think, later, that we think is the good thing, well, government's got to enforce it. We can't choose to live dangerously. I can't choose to say, hey, you know, this is just a fact of life now. Just like it's a fact of life, if you want to enjoy the modern conveniences of plane travel, some of them are going to crash. And I use that example because I have a terrible phobia of flying. And for a while, I didn't do it. I didn't fly. I let it cripple me. And I realized that wasn't living. There were places I wanted to go. That actually wasn't the first step that got me to go over my phobia. That's now more my libertarian justification to try to get over my phobia. Actually, for those of you who are people of faith, what got me to get over that phobia, maybe this will inspire some of you who have some fears, is I was sitting at church and the preacher was preaching through Revelation, and he said, and this actually, you guys will see a lot of this in me, because this one sermon really, it rocked my world. But he had said in reading out the things of the people who will not inherit the kingdom of God, we all think of murderers and things like that. But you want to know what's on the list of people who will not inherit the kingdom of God? The cowardly. Which is probably why I have such disdain for cowardice. So I determined not to be a coward about things that I care about. So yeah, and then you start to get other justifications as well. And I think at the time I realized I had a very fundamental misunderstanding of what bravery is, or what lack of cowardice is. Being brave or not being a coward does not mean not being afraid. It doesn't mean fearlessness. If you're fearless, you can't be brave. Because it's nothing to you. It's just like breathing if you're fearless. Bravery is when you're scared shitless and do it anyway. That is bravery. Fearlessness, that makes it easy then. What's probably hard for you if you're fearless is to show weakness. But anyway, yeah, the government knows best. So, I love this comment. I was talking about resistance to contagion and resistance to viruses. Here's Gary. Gary said, resistance to government is what I'm developing. Hey, that's a good thing. Build up that immunity to thinking the government is anything good. And I'd like y'all's opinion. Last time on this, I had some really bad lighting. And I put a ring light up here with my other lights. And to me, on this end, the lighting looks much better. Don't go, I look pale, because I am pale. It's winter in freaking Colorado. We got over 2 feet of snow outside. But it's not glary like it was last time. But let me know. I'd like y'all's opinion, because I can adjust the lighting some more. But let's continue. Make sure I've got the comments up. Okay, here we go.
And this is how people on the left tend to think of the government. The government is there to do the good thing. So if you're going to if we want you to wear a mask, we have to force you to wear a mask. And if somebody says that they think that you should have the ability not to wear a mask, that's the same thing as them saying they want you not to wear a mask. Not how this works. If Texas says we're not going to mandate it, that means exactly what it means, right? Which means they're not going to punish people. They're not going to fine people. They're not going to jail people. They're not going to have a mask mandate on the books. That doesn't mean that you on an individual level can't wear a mask. You can anytime you want. You can decide where to go. You can determine if you don't want to go into a business that has a lot of unmasked people. And we make these sorts of decisions every single day throughout our lives. Do you drive into a particular area with a high crime rate? Do you go out at a particular time of night when there are fewer people out on the streets? Where do you jog? Where do you send your kids to school? Right? These sort of risk assessments. How fast do you drive? Which route do you take? All of these risk assessments are part of your everyday life. We have evolved to make these risk assessments. Sometimes we make good risk assessments. Sometimes we make bad risk assessments. But the purpose of freedom is so that you can make those risk assessments. According to the left, however, you should not be allowed to do this because you're stupid.
They literally want to sacrifice the lives of our fellow Texans for, I don't know, for political gain, to satisfy certain powerful interests within the state. And this isn't hyperbole. It's hard to escape the conclusion that it's also a cult of death.
Isn't that one of the most ridiculous things you've ever heard in your life? You know, I'm a peaceful person, but that dude has a punchable face. So, if the government doesn't force something, then it's a culture of death. And we are sacrificing the lives of, in this circumstance, it was Texans, but, you know, it could be anywhere. I don't live in Texas, but, you know, that example would go for anywhere. How freaking ridiculous is that? But I think there's a nuance here that Ben didn't pick up. It's not just, see, the left doesn't view you as an individual. The right doesn't in some ways either. So, but in this particular case, we're talking about the left. So you're not allowed to make these choices because they want to have a certain type of world. And they feel everybody should be forced to agree with this. So for them, it's not really about choices. They don't want to have to not go to a certain store because that store won't ask voluntarily people to wear masks. They, very selfishly, want everything to be to their liking so they don't have to make any choices, and you can't make any choices. That is more of what it's all about. Because whose lives are allegedly being sacrificed? The people who choose to come in contact with each other? See, they don't want to take this responsibility. They want the responsibility taken entirely away, and for you also not to have that choice for their comfort. And that is the ultimate selfishness of it. I just laugh at how people try to claim libertarians are selfish. No. Those who say, because there's some grandma somewhere who's old, and I'm sorry, old people die. We're all going to be there. Death is 100%. You're never going to protect every grandma from death. Every grandma is going to die. And when you're a grandma or grandpa, you know, metaphorically, whether you have grandchildren or not, you're going to die. We haven't conquered that yet. So to tell me, where I've still got, knock on wood, multiple decades of good, healthy life left, that I've got to sacrifice that life for somebody at the end of life who might get sick? No. If they're worried, they should stay inside. We're not being the selfish ones. You're not being selfish just to simply want to live your life. And I think, was it Dave Smith? They had a long discussion that it was just so ironic about how the boomers love to say how selfish the millennials are, when it's the boomers that have put all this debt on people, that couldn't give up Social Security even though we would have so much more funds and money and the government shouldn't be doing your retirement anyway. And now we all have to stay inside. Everyone younger than them needs to stay inside for them. No, the millennials are not a selfish generation. The most selfish generation out there is the fucking boomers. And I'm almost a boomer myself. And even if I was a boomer, I would still be saying that. Right at the beginning of generation, I think it's Z. No, not Z. What was it? What's the one right after boomer? Whatever one that is, that's the one I am. But barely. I'm right on the cusp. But holy shit. That is selfish. To be sacrificing the life of young people for you. No. And I'm getting towards the old phase myself. I'm not young. And I do not want to sacrifice. I don't want to sacrifice anybody for me. But we have turned into a parasitic society where the older people are feeding upon the young. And then you have these old fucking Karens. Oh, look at these kids who are on the beach. Yeah, living their lives. Go home, Karen. Holy shit. Yeah, Guy, I was born in X. Yeah, that's it. I was born in 1967. So you and I are right in about that 5-year period of the cusp. But we're solidly in Gen X. But, you know, kind of in the interim between it. And yeah, Larry had a great point. I want to put this up. Right? The world is upside down because normally, yes, the older sacrifices for the future. But the most entitled generation is not the millennials. And if I were a millennial, I would be really fucking pissed at getting trashed so much with this shitty deal that the boomers have left the younger people with. It's not right. So, yeah, let's go on to the next one. I should have got that clip from Dave Smith. I still might. They nailed it. They really nailed it.
You want to talk about privilege? This guy is the definition of privilege. And my goodness, Beto O'Rourke, what a joke he is. But that's the point, right? Is that when he says things like, it's a cult, they want to kill us all, right? If I say to you, you're a free human being. You have the ability to decide for yourself whether you want to wear a mask or whether you don't want to wear a mask. That is me saying that you should go out and kill everybody. I mean, it's me saying that I want a cult of death, according to Beto O'Rourke. So liberty is a cult of death. You being able to make your own decisions, your own risk assessment. That is a cult of death, complete with human sacrifice and everything.
Yep. He nailed that. God, I mean, there's very few people. Those of you who know me well know that I try to be charitable. Like, I could say something nice about everybody. That I got in a big controversy last year because I actually said something nice about Caitlin Bennett. I can say something nice about anybody. I can find something nice to say about Satan. The joke always is, I could say, well, you know, at least he wears red really well. Not everyone can pull off red. I try to say something nice about everybody. I can't think of a damn nice thing to say about Beto O'Rourke. That dude is such the epitome of arrogant, self-entitled, just, oh, Lord have mercy. That dude just makes me want to retch. But let's continue on that note.
Joe Biden said that they were Neanderthals in Texas and Mississippi. Neanderthals. Now, to be fair, Joe Biden does remember the Neanderthals. The Neanderthals were some of his best friends. And he remembers riding a dinosaur. You know, he's a real blue-collar guy, Joe Biden. He would clock in for a day at the rock quarry, and then he would slide down the back of a brontosaurus and get into his car. And then he would use his actual feet, right? Move those feet so he could get home to Wilma. But here is Joe Biden talking about how everyone who disagrees with him is a Neanderthal. This is Captain Unity over here.
I think it's a big mistake. Look, I hope everybody's realized by now, these masks make a difference. And the last thing we need is the Neanderthal thinking that in the meantime, everything's fine, take off your mask, forget it. It still matters. It's critical that they follow the science.
Yeah.
Wash your hands, hot water, do it frequently. Wear a mask and stay socially distanced. And I know you all know that. I wish the heck some of our elected officials knew it.
What a piece of work. You know, why aren't people screaming about his name calling? I called out Trump for his name calling. I didn't like the way he necessarily talked about people who disagreed with him. But, you know, I guess it's okay when you're from the left or you're creepy Joe Biden. You know, Neanderthal. So normally I don't like making really cheap jokes like Ben Shapiro did, where he said Biden knew Neanderthals personally. When you're going to call people names like that, you deserve that comeback. You asked for it. I mean, how frickin' arrogant. They want to live their lives and not be beholden to the government and not look to the government as the savior. And that's Neanderthal thinking. Isn't that, I just can't even comprehend the arrogance. You know, it's nutty. Just called the whole state, well, because not everybody in Texas agrees, but basically the state of Texas. I wish it was Colorado. Neanderthals. I mean, yay, unity. We all need to come together, right, Joe? You're so full of it.
Speaking of this kind of idea of the magic, of all of it, there's something to me, obviously this is, I'm sure you were pleased to hear that yesterday, the governor of Texas announced it's over. And there's something so interesting about this, because it almost does feel like it's just this magic, which is what, government is kind of in a way. It's just, the idea of potions. I write this down and other people voted on it and boom, this isn't just words on a paper anymore. This is law, and like these things that aren't just kind of made up. The only reality is whether they have the power to enforce that or not. But so you have Joe Biden. He's given a speech the other day and he's like, well, I'm hoping that a year from now we'll be back to normal, but I don't know. And it depends on X, Y, and Z. And then a governor in Texas just went, no, now.
Yeah, I love that point. That's so fantastic. Isn't it like magic? How, these two entirely different realities. It's just crazy. But yeah, I love the way Dave, and I'm sorry for that really quick switch between two men who couldn't be any more different, Ben Shapiro and Dave Smith, but Dave has it exactly down. What makes the almighty word of government, what makes the Texas guy wrong and Biden right? Neither of them actually are right ultimately. Only we can make those choices. And, the Texas government's on the side of us making choices. So in that sense, he is right. But even if Biden were right about the danger, which I do not believe, he would still be wrong because he's not letting people be people. He wants us, like so many on the left, to be perpetual children. I mean, that was, I do not know how he did not get more crap for that statement where he had said, if you're black and you're not voting for me, you're not really black, or it was something very close to that. I mean, the mindset of these people, am I the only one who's just like gobsmacked at the arrogance? I'm using MAC eyeshadow. I've got a whole palette of it here. And I am not, and MAC eyeshadow, or any of MAC cosmetics, the ladies know, it's not cheap makeup, but look how patchy it's going on. I am not happy. Because this is not cheap eyeshadow. I could get better coverage. See how the patches right here? It's like ridiculous. Oh my God. Okay.
You gotta take what you're given, that's how we live it. Don't be mad at the system, it's simply how we've existed. I hear a lot of people talking like they politicians and choose to be an accountant because it's safe in the business.